Well, now let us talk about business to business buyers. The primary and short agenda for this chapter is actually just to understand how business markets happen to be different from consumer markets. We see consumer markets and all the advertising and promotion that goes on in consumer markets every day. It's all around us, but usually we do not understand the business markets very well. So that is what we will do in this chapter. So in terms of our agenda, we will understand what is meant by organizational buyers, how they are different, and we'll learn a little bit about something that's called makes that you read about in the chapter. So first, let's clarify what is the difference between a business product and a consumer product. And as you can see, a business product can be of four different types. It can be used for manufacturing, for aiding the operations, or being acquired by wholesalers or retailers for being resold into the marketplace. So even though business products can be of these different types, that does not mean that these products are different. We should not. I mean, one mistake we would make is that we should not think that steel or aluminum or forklifts or ladders, they are business products, whereas pencils and furniture and crockery and books, they are consumer products. That is not true, because all the consumer products can be business products as well. The primary difference is actually the intended use, for what purpose you are going to use that particular product. And this slide illustrates it very well. The same products, the cupboards and the oven and the teddy bear and the folder and pen and photocopier, all of these products can be termed as consumer when they are being used by the final consumer, or they can be called business products when the same products are being used, same pencil, same pen, or same folder, when it is being used by a business for running its own operations, it becomes a business product. So essentially, there is no real difference between consumer and business products. The real difference actually lies in the intended use of the product. That's how we define the difference. And these are the different types of business products which are sold by marketers in the market. They range from major equipment, expensive, high value items, to all the way to supplies, such as oil, lubrication oil, photocopier paper, pencil, pens, or they could fall in the category of raw materials or just accessory equipment such as forklifts or something like that. So these products are different than business services such as consulting services, marketing research services, advertising services. They are sold in a different way. And a couple of differences you will see between these different product categories is that the nature of the relationship changes when you move from a product category such as supplies to that of major equipment versus business services. The relationship for a business service is usually much more close between the buyer and the seller. That is not the case about when it comes to supplies. The relationship does not have to be all that close. Sometimes you will see that leasing is practiced in capital equipment such as major equipment and accessory equipment. That kind of leasing does not take place in raw materials or supplies or sometimes even business services. So the nature of the relationship changes how the product is sold. That also varies from product category to product category, and it's good to know that difference. So here is one thing that we need to remember, that not all business customers are the same. They fall into four broad categories. This is something we really need to remember. There could be producers, manufacturers. The second category is that of intermediaries, of wholesalers, retailers, agents, etc. The third category is that of government buyers, federal and state government, which happens to be the single biggest buyer in almost every country, including the United States. And most companies have a different sales team that focuses on selling to the government agencies. And then finally, the fourth category is that of non-profits, such as colleges, universities, schools, churches, etc., which have different kinds of needs. So this is one thing we need to remember. that there are four very distinct types of business buyers out there. And usually the sales team working with companies which go out and sell, companies have different sales teams for catering to each of these different categories of business buyers. So if you are selling to intermediaries, then typically you will not be selling to producers and manufacturers, and you will not be selling to governments because their needs are different. The strategies, the marketing mix used by companies for selling to these four different entities is also very different, and so are salespeople who cater to these different market segments. And this is the most important slide on this chapter that we need to understand. The differences between business markets and consumer markets. There's a large variety of differences, and we need to know. Organizational, individual, we know that. Volumes are much larger in business markets. The order size is very large, so stakes are high. Consumer markets are only small. Quantities are bought by retail customers. The number of customers are much fewer in business markets. In absolute numbers, there are very many in consumer markets. And of course, you can imagine there are fewer large companies which make larger purchases from companies. Location, most business buyers, they are concentrated in a given geographic territory sometimes, and consumer markets are highly dispersed across the country. And this concentration of business buyers is very typical. It varies from industry to industry. You must have noticed that how the auto industry is located in the Detroit area, Detroit, Michigan, Ohio area. All these, their vendors, suppliers, the whole ecosystem of a given industry is usually located in one given geographic territory. When it comes to financial services, it tends to get concentrated in the New York area or London in Europe. When it comes to IT industry, the Silicon Valley is the place to go. So you will see that most industries, they tend to concentrate in one area, and it makes for greater efficiencies. Distribution is more direct in nature. So in business to business markets, they deal directly with vendor companies. Business buyers, they do not like to deal with wholesalers or retailers, and they buy in bulk in large quantities directly from manufacturers. So in consumer markets, you have more levels: wholesalers, sub-wholesalers, dealers, distributors, and so on. Nature of buy is very professional in business markets. They are trained buyers whose full-time job is to buy products for their company. In consumer markets, it is not all that professional, and consumers buy things at their own personal level. Buying influence is usually much more multiple in nature. In business markets, usually there are buying committees. Multiple influences play a role. There is one research which found out that the buying center in a business in a business buyer can be as big as 34 different people playing a role in the decision making in the buying process. That is definitely not the case in consumer markets. At most, one or two members of the family, they play a role. Negotiations are very complex. They take longer time. That is not the case in consumer markets. There's something called reciprocity that exists in business markets, not in the consumer markets. Reciprocity means you buy from me and I will buy from you. So, for example, if a Xerox photocopier Xerox wants to sell photocopier machines to, let's say, Grand Valley State University, or say a hotel chain like Hilton Hotels. So Hilton Hotels can tell Xerox Corporation that, hey, we will buy photocopier machines from you if you as a company make a policy decision that all the executives traveling worldwide, they would be staying in Hilton Hotels. So Hilton gets business in return. That's reciprocity. Or Grand Valley can say, okay, we will, if all the executives, they should attend Grand Valley State University's online program or hybrid program or executive program. That's when we will buy. So that is something which exists in business markets. Leasing is very popular in business markets, not so much in consumer markets. It does exist in some industries such as automobile, but not a whole lot. And the primary mode of promoting the product in business markets is usually personal selling. There's a sales force and very little of advertising, whereas in consumer markets, a lot of advertising takes place. There are other differences too, but it's enough for us to understand these primary differences. A couple of other differences that come to my mind. The buying cycle is very long in business markets. It sometimes takes several months before a buying decision is made, and that is often not the case in consumer markets. And just like consumer markets, there is something called a buying center in business markets as well. And basically it implies multiple buying influences. So in any company, there are buyers who would be purchasing managers who will talk to salespeople and they will place the orders. But they are not the only people playing a role in making the purchase. There are other influencers, users, and deciders, senior top management, finance chief, who's going to decide whether or not the company is going to buy that particular product or not, and gatekeepers, the executive assistants, the admin assistants working in the company who control the flow of information, and they play an important role. So salespeople who represent their companies and they contact business buyers, they have to manage the buying center. And as I told you, the buying center is much more pronounced in business markets compared to consumer markets, and it can be as big as 30 plus people playing a role. So a whole team has to make the selling effort from the selling company, and they have to cater to the needs of a whole large team which works at the buying company for the buyer firm. And lastly, it's a short lecture. And lastly, we need to understand what NAICS is and how it works. So I hope you understood it from the text itself. NAICS is a classification system, and most of the information in the country on businesses, various businesses, it is organized in the NAICS structure, North American Industrial Classification System. And you can go to NAICS.com and find out about their classification. But essentially, how it works is, and this information is utilized by marketers for segmenting their markets and seeing how much potential is in each of the markets and how to forecast their sales and how to identify who the best customers would be. So we need to understand the basic logic behind how the NAICS codes work. So NAICS codes, they are at a shorter level, 2-digit NAICS codes. They connote a certain industrial sector, for example, construction or manufacturing or retail. So 44 shows that it's a retail industry. Then as you keep adding one more digit to the NAICS code, it keeps getting more and more specific. So within manufacturing, apparel would be 315. So all the companies which are in the apparel sector, they would have the NAICS code of 315. And as you drill down further within apparel, what exactly they are doing, they could be knitting, they could be in cutting and sewing. It becomes even more. So if you want to find out which are the companies which are into the cutting and sewing of apparel, then that NAICS code would be 3152. You can look for information from a database and look for 3152, and you will get the information on all those companies. And similarly, it keeps going down and keeps becoming more and more specific. So this is how NAICS code work, and all the business related data in the country is organized in the NAICS format, and it's very helpful for marketers and other companies which are trying to understand the business to business markets. And once again, the key messages from this chapter and some of the key terms. It was a super short chapter, and that's all we need to remember from this. Well, thank you for listening, and catch you later. Bye-bye.